The scent of antique parchment, ozone from overcharged artifacts, and a faint, persistent metallic tang clung to the air of the Mendwick Emporium. Sunlight, filtered through grimy leaded windows, struggled to illuminate the cluttered shelves and workbenches, casting long, dancing shadows that seemed to swallow sound. Alaric Thorne, perched precariously on a stool, meticulously polishing a cracked divination crystal with a chamois cloth side. He was an ordinary wizard, or so he felt, distinguished primarily by his uncanny knack for attracting dust and his tendency to blend into the background. His robes, a comfortable but unremarkable gray, were smudged with polish and fine metal filings. His brown hair perpetually looked as if he'd just run his hand through it in exasperation, a frequent occurrence. For a wizard living in the wake of Voldemort's initial defeat, a defeat celebrated with fireworks and feasts, Alaric felt little joy. Instead, a low, persistent hum of dread resonated deep within his bones, a premonition of returning shadows that others seemed eager to forget. He tried to articulate it once, to a gruff aura who'd merely patted his shoulder with a dismissive chuckle, advising him to let bygones be bygones. But bygones, Alaric knew, rarely truly stayed gone. He ran a thumb over a microfracture in the crystal, a habit he developed for discerning the subtle weaknesses in objects, and by extension, in himself. He knew he was clever enough, even talented, but every act of magic he performed was shadowed by a whisper of not good enough, a relic of a childhood spent overshadowed by flashier, more confident peers. This self-doubt was his most persistent spell, unbreakable even by a well-aimed finite incantatem. His current task was less than glamorous. An elderly witch, convinced her crystal ball had lost its luster for prophecy, had brought it in, suspecting a curse rather than simple age and neglect. Alaric suspected the latter, but a job was a job. At least it afforded him quiet moments to delve into the obscure magical texts he occasionally found tucked away in forgotten corners of the shop, dreaming of ancient lore far removed from the mundane repairs. The restricted section of the Hogwarts library had been his true sanctuary, and he missed it terribly. A sudden, sharp chill permeated the shop, cutting through the usual musty warmth. Alaric shivered, his senses immediately on edge. It wasn't the usual draft. This was colder, sharper, almost a negative heat that prickled his skin. The air grew heavy, like static before a storm, and the delicate magical instruments on the shelves around him began to hum faintly, their needles twitching erratically. A deep, subtle hum resonated through the floorboards, a vibration Alaric felt more than heard. This wasn't just a mood, it was a tangible presence, a wave of familiar malevolence that made his stomach clench. Voldemort. He felt it, a distant echo of the Dark Lord's power, a ripple in the fabric of reality that only he seemed attuned to. He dropped the crystal ball, catching it just before it hit the floor, his heart hammering. His gaze swept the cluttered workbench, searching for an anomaly. Amongst a pile of tarnished silver, discarded charms, and bits of broken wanwood, his eyes landed on something unremarkable. It was a dull, bronze-colored amulet, no bigger than his palm, strung on a frayed leather cord. It had been part of a recent consignment of found treasures from a rather chaotic estate sale, a box of objects dismissed as mundane. It had sat there for days, utterly ignored. But now, as the chilling wave of dark magic intensified, a faint, almost imperceptible warmth emanated from the amulet. It pulsed faintly, like a sluggish heartbeat, and Alaric felt an inexplicable pull towards it. Against his better judgment, a flicker of instinct overriding his usual caution, he reached out. His fingers brushed the cool metal, then wrapped around it. The moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy, neither warm nor cold, but intensely alive, jolted through him. It was as if 1,000 dormant nerves had suddenly awakened. The ancient bronze, previously dull and lifeless, began to glow with a soft, inner luminescence, growing steadily brighter. The dread that had been clinging to Alaric receded, replaced by a sense of profound awe. Then, the true magic began. From the amulet, a cascade of shimmering, pulsating motes of light erupted, swirling around Alaric like a nebula caught in a breath. They were not sparks, nor simple glows, but living points of pure, ethereal luminescence, each one a tiny, dancing star. They coalesced, expanded, then contracted, forming intricate patterns that defied Muggle physics. This was Mothra's light, Alaric realized with a breathless gasp, recalling hushed legends from his restricted section days, stories of a benevolent, ancient energy, a spiritual guardian. He'd always dismissed them as poetic allegory, remnants of a forgotten age. Yet here it was, undeniable, tangible, beautiful. The light spun faster, then, with a silent command, elongated into a shimmering, arrow-like beam, pointing directly towards the wall. It pulsed, then contracted, gathering itself into a single, brilliant sphere of golden light that hovered before him. Within its radiant core, images began to form, swirling like mist in a scrying bowl. First, a familiar street, cobbled and narrow, lined with peculiar shops and bustling with cloaked figures. Diagon Alley. Alaric recognized it instantly, the heart of wizarding London. But as the light intensified, the image within the sphere began to distort, focusing on a specific, rather unassuming establishment. It was Gringotts Wizarding Bank, its imposing white marble facade and grand bronze doors etched into the magical projection. Not the entire bank, but a specific section, an area Alaric vaguely recalled from childhood visits as one of the more ancient, heavily warded vaults, tucked away beneath the main complex, seldom accessed by the general public. A shimmering distortion, like heat haze over a desert road, rippled over the image of Gringotts. It wasn't a physical distortion, but a magical one, visible only through the radiant lens of Mothra's light. The motes of light danced more frantically now, drawing his attention to a single, infinitesimally small point within the vault's ethereal depiction. A pulse, dark and insidious, emanated from it, struggling to be concealed by layers of ancient enchantments, yet laid bare by the benevolent light. It was a signature, vibrant and malevolent, radiating an unmistakable echo of Voldemort's lingering power. It was a Horcrux. The revelation hit Alaric with the force of a full-body blasting curse. His breath hitched, his mind reeling. A Horcrux. Here? In Gringotts, of all places? And not just a Horcrux, but the Horcrux that the legend whispered about, the one meant to secure eternal life. This was the source of his nameless dread, the insidious wrought at the heart of the wizarding world. It wasn't just a feeling, it was real, concrete, and terrifying. The Lumen Amulet, still glowing fiercely in his hand, seemed to thrum with purpose. The light it emitted wasn't just revealing, it felt expectant. It wasn't enough to simply see. He had to act. His heart pounded against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat of fear and burgeoning resolve. Alaric Thorne, the overlooked, the self-doubting, suddenly found himself staring down a path he never imagined. The path to facing the remnants of the darkest wizard in history. He, who struggled to mend a cracked crystal, was now being called to mend the shattered soul of a world. The thought was absurd, terrifying, exhilarating. He looked at the shimmering projection, then back at the simple, bronze amulet in his hand. It wasn't just an artifact. It was a guide, a silent, ancient voice urging him forward. He was terrified, yes, but beneath the fear, a tiny ember of something new began to glow, a nascent sense of purpose, of worth. He had felt the dread, seen the truth no one else could, and now he held the key. The first Horcrux, a fragment of Voldemort's twisted soul, lay hidden within the depths of Gringotts. And Alaric, the ordinary wizard, knew he had to be the one to find it. The dusty air of his workshop, usually a comforting shroud, now felt charged with an almost breathless anticipation. Alaric's fingers trembled slightly as he traced the intricate carvings on the Lumen Amulet. The shimmering signature, clear as a bell in his mind's eye, pulsed with an undeniable malevolence, yet it was also ringed by the benevolent, protective glow of Mothra's light. The Hog's Head Inn. Of all places. He turned to Alara and Finn, who were still staring at him with a mixture of concern and growing curiosity. It showed me something, he managed, his voice a little hoarse. The amulet. It glowed, and then I saw it. A dark, evil signature, shimmering. Like a hidden scar on the world. He paused, searching for the right words. "It's in the Hog's Head Inn." Ilara's brow furrowed, her analytical mind already racing. "A hidden scar? Alaric, you're suggesting it pinpointed. One of those things." Her voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, not daring to utter the word Horcrux aloud. "But how? What exactly did you see?" Finn, ever the pragmatist, gripped the hilt of his wand, his gaze sweeping the room as if expecting immediate attack. "The Hog's Head? That dive? Are you sure, mate? Sounds like a good place for a brawl, not a Dark Lord's trinket." His skepticism was clear, but so was his underlying worry. Alaric clutched the amulet tighter. He felt the residual warmth of Mothra's light, a faint hum against his palm. It wasn't just a feeling, Finn. It was a vision, clear as day. The amulet, it activated. It's what the Oracle spoke of. Mothra's light. It pierces through dark magic concealment. He looked at Alara, trying to convey the certainty he felt despite his innate doubt. The signature was unmistakable. Cold, malevolent, yet fragile somehow. And the light, it was benevolent, protective. It showed me the location, a specific corner in the common room, near the old fireplace. Alara walked closer, her gaze fixed on the Lumen Amulet. "Let me see it," she requested, reaching out. Alaric hesitated for a moment before placing the amulet in her hand. It felt cool and smooth against her skin, the ancient metal emanating a faint, almost imperceptible warmth. She turned it over, examining the etchings, her fingers tracing the patterns. Fascinating. The craftwork suggests pre-Roman origins, perhaps even older. And the magical resonance. She closed her eyes, focusing. It's dormant now, but there's a residual power. A unique frequency. Not like any spell I've ever encountered. It only activated when I touched it, and when the dark magic in the air surged, Alaric explained, a flicker of his old insecurity returning. "Perhaps it's tied to my latent energy," as the Oracle said. Alara opened her eyes, a new glint of excitement in them. Latent energy, or perhaps a unique resonance. If what you say is true, Alaric, this isn't just an artifact. This is a divine compass. And the Hog's Head, it's dingy, yes, but also a place where many unsavory characters pass through, a hub of illicit dealings. A perfect place to hide something that nobody would ever look for or expect to find. She handed the amulet back to him. "We need to go. Tonight." Disillusionment charms, naturally. And extreme caution. Finn nodded grimly. "Right. If Voldemort's got a piece of himself stewing in that cesspit, it's not going to be undefended. Could be wards, curses, maybe even some of his old cronies still lurking." "I'll go first, Alara. You cover our flanks. Alaric, you stick close, amulet at the ready." The short journey to Hogsmeade was tense, filled with the soft rustle of their cloaks and the hushed commands of Finn as he led the way, his wand tip glowing faintly, scanning for any magical tripwires. The night air was crisp and cold, the only sound the distant hoot of an owl. As they approached the Hog's Head Inn, its crooked silhouette loomed against the pale moonlight, looking even more ominous than usual. The windows were dark, the usually raucous sounds of its patrons replaced by an eerie silence. "All right, lass," Finn whispered, holding up a hand. "Wards detected. Nothing too sophisticated on the exterior, mostly standard protection, but there's a flicker of something, colder, near the chimney stack. A resonance." Alaric felt the Lumen Amulet grow noticeably warmer in his hand, a faint thrumming against his palm. He could feel it now, the oppressive weight of the dark magic, a cold, insidious presence that seeped from the very stones of the inn. It was a suffocating sensation, like trying to breathe in a vacuum. He held the amulet forward, and a faint, shimmering motes of light, barely visible in the darkness, began to pulse from its surface, dancing like fireflies. They drifted towards the inn, coalescing near the indicated spot. "It's here," Alaric breathed, the fear catching in his throat, but also a strange sense of purpose. "The light, it's pulling me." Alara cast a series of diagnostic charms, her wand tracing complex patterns in the air. Finn's right, there's a layered ward, but the amulet seems to be neutralizing its perception-altering effects for us. It's as if it's showing us the true magical topography, stripping away the illusion. With Finn's careful dismantling of the outer wards and Alara's precise counter-charms, they slipped inside the inn. The common room was exactly as Alaric remembered, dingy, dusty, and smelling faintly of stale ale and old secrets. But now it felt different. The air was heavy, almost viscous, with an invisible dread. The motes of light from the Lumen Amulet were stronger now, brighter, swirling around Alaric like a miniature galaxy. They danced towards the massive stone fireplace, coalescing specifically around a loose, ancient-looking brick near the hearth. There, Alaric pointed, his voice barely a whisper. That brick. As they approached, a sudden, guttural growl echoed from the shadows. From behind the counter, a figure coalesced, not human, but a distorted, shadowy construct of pure dark magic, vaguely resembling a hunched, clawed creature. Its eyes glowed with malevolent red pinpricks, and its form flickered, as if perpetually on the verge of dissolving and reforming. It reeked of stale magic and death. A remnant, Alara hissed, raising her wand. A sentient protective charm, fueled by dark intent. Voldemort always had a flair for the dramatic. The shadow creature lunged, its claws extended, leaving trails of chilling air. Finn reacted instantly, shouting, Protego Maxima. A shimmering, golden shield erupted, deflecting the creature's initial swipe with a screech of tortured magic. It's not just a charm, Alaric gasped, the amulet throbbing in his hand. It's drawing power from the object itself. It's trying to protect the Horcrux. The oracle's voice, a soft, ethereal whisper, brushed against Alaric's mind, clear despite the chaos. The light reveals, the pure heart conquers. Weakness lies within the construct, its connection to the shard. Channel, Alaric. Channel the Lumen. Fear, cold and familiar, tried to seize Alaric. He was no duelist. He was a wizard who fixed broken things, not one who fought shadowy abominations. But then he looked at Finn, fiercely defending them, and Alara, already formulating a complex counterspell, her brow furrowed in concentration. They were trusting him. They were depending on him. And the light of the amulet, so warm and steadfast, urged him onward. He took a deep breath, clutching the amulet, letting the warmth spread through his arm, through his chest. He focused on the shadow creature, seeing not just its terrifying form, but the faint, shimmering threads of dark magic connecting it to the loose brick. The Lumen Amulet pulsed violently in his hand, and the motes of light surrounding him intensified, forming a faint halo. I need to get to that brick. Alaric yelled over the magical din. Finn, try to keep it occupied. Alara, can you create a diversion? On it. Alara shouted, already weaving a complex spell. Illusionum Spectri. A flickering, ghostly image of a charging unicorn burst forth, galloping towards the creature. The shadow construct wavered, momentarily confused by the sudden, bright distraction. This was Alaric's chance. Ducking under Finn's shield, he scrambled towards the fireplace, the Lumen Amulet leading the way. The motes of light concentrated on the loose brick, highlighting a barely perceptible crack. As he reached it, the shadow creature let out another shriek, lunging past the ephemeral unicorn, its focus now solely on Alaric. Finite incantatum. Finn roared, a burst of raw magical energy hitting the construct, momentarily staggering it. Alaric ignored the raging battle behind him. He pressed the Lumen Amulet against the old brick. The amulet flared, and a beam of pure, shimmering light, brighter and more focused than anything he'd seen before, burst forth. It didn't just illuminate the brick, it seemed to flow into it, dissolving the ancient mortar. With a soft click, the brick came loose, revealing a small, dark recess within the wall. Nestled within, on a bed of faded velvet, lay an old, tarnished silver locket. It was plain, unadorned, utterly unremarkable save for the oppressive aura of malevolence that radiated from it. It was cold to the touch, and as Alaric's fingers brushed it, he felt a jolt of utter despair, a whisper of countless forgotten cruelties, echoing the Dark Lord's soul. This was it. The Horcrux. The shadow creature, sensing its protector's failure, roared with renewed fury, surging towards Alaric, its form more solid, more terrifying. Alaric, now! Alara screamed, having just dispelled her weakening illusion. He knew what he had to do. His heart hammered, but a strange, unyielding resolve coursed through him. He lifted the silver locket in one hand, the Lumen Amulet in the other. He closed his eyes, focusing, letting the light from the amulet flood his senses. He envisioned Mothra's light, benevolent and all-consuming, pouring into the locket, burning away the darkness. He pushed. He pushed with everything he had, not just his magic, but his will, his courage, his sudden, fierce belief in himself. The Lumen Amulet blazed, an almost painful light erupting from its core. The motes of light swirling around Alaric coalesced into a torrent, a brilliant, focused beam that slammed into the silver locket. The locket bucked, resisting. A piercing shriek, utterly devoid of humanity, tore through the air, vibrating through Alaric's bones. Dark tendrils of magic lashed out from the locket, trying to coil around his arm, whispering promises of power, visions of glory, trying to tempt him, to break him. But Alaric held fast, the light intensifying, pure and resolute. He felt the cold, insidious presence of Voldemort's fractured soul trying to fight back, to cling to existence, to defy extinction. He pushed harder, drawing on a well of strength he never knew he possessed. The dark tendrils recoiled, hissing as if burned. The silver locket began to glow, not with dark magic, but with the radiant, holy light of the amulet. A crack appeared on its surface, then another. With a final, desperate shriek that seemed to echo from the deepest pits of hell, the locket exploded. Not in a burst of destructive force, but in a dazzling, silent implosion of pure light. The darkness that had clung to it for so long was annihilated, consumed utterly. Where the locket had been, there was now only a shower of golden dust, shimmering briefly before dissolving into nothingness. As the locket vanished, the shadow creature let out a wail of despair, its form flickering violently before collapsing into nothing more than wisps of gray smoke, dissipating harmlessly into the stale air. Silence fell, absolute and profound. The oppressive weight that had filled the inn lifted, replaced by an air that felt lighter, cleaner, as if a great sickness had just been purged. Alaric stood there, panting, the Lumen Amulet now warm but calm in his hand. His knees felt weak, his body exhausted, but his heart soared with a feeling of profound accomplishment, a triumph he had never before experienced. He had done it. He, Alaric Thorne, had destroyed a Horcrux. Alara and Finn rushed to his side, their faces a mixture of awe and relief. Alaric, you actually did it, Finn murmured, his hand clapped firmly on Alaric's shoulder. Bloody brilliant, mate. Alara, ever the scholar, looked around, her eyes wide. The residual dark magic, it's gone. Completely. The very air feels different. Lighter. This is unprecedented. You didn't just destroy an object, Alaric. You cleansed a piece of the world. A wave of exhaustion washed over Alaric, but beneath it, a nascent spark of confidence began to glow. He looked at the amulet, its surface now glowing with a soft, steady radiance. It felt connected to him more than before. The oracle's voice was gone, but the feeling of purpose remained. Just as Alaric thought they were done, the Lumen Amulet in his hand pulsed again, stronger this time. The soft radiance intensified, and the shimmering motes of light began to dance once more, but this time, they weren't converging on a known location. Instead, they spun outwards, reforming into a swirling, ethereal compass, its light pointing northeast, towards the distant, rugged coasts of Scotland. And then, from the depths of the amulet, a new image began to form in Alaric's mind, a glimpse of ancient, weather-beaten stones, standing sentinel against a furious, churning sea, shrouded in a perpetual mist, and beneath them, a cavern, dark and vast, resonating with the primeval hum and the faint, cold echo of another Horcrux. Alaric looked at Alara and Finn, a new determination in his eyes. The fear was still there, a knot in his stomach, but it was overshadowed now by a growing sense of responsibility and an undeniable thrill of purpose. He was no longer just an ordinary wizard, and the quest had just begun. The lingering tremor in Alaric's hands was less a sign of fear and more a residue of pure, unadulterated magical power. The destruction of the first Horcrux, the cursed locket in the abandoned shop, had been an eruption of raw magic, a cleansing fire that had left him exhilarated and drained. Alara had been quick to check the amulet, her brow furrowed in concentration, while Finn had clapped him on the shoulder, a grin of genuine awe on his face. Now, a day later, back in the quiet sanctuary of Finn's magically expanded flat, the high wore off, replaced by a quiet sense of accomplishment and a renewed sense of purpose. The Lumen Amulet, which had rested dormant for hours, suddenly thrummed against Alaric's chest. It wasn't a frantic pulse like before, but a slow, steady beat, radiating a warmth that seeped into his very bones. He reached for it, pulling it out from beneath his robes. The opalescent surface shimmered, and from within, motes of the familiar Mothra's light began to coalesce. This time, the light didn't flash a direct image. Instead, it swirled, forming intricate patterns that resembled ancient script, symbols that vaguely reminded Alaric of the arcane runes he'd sometimes glimpsed in the deepest, dustiest tomes of the restricted section. The patterns shifted, spiraling upwards like a phantom staircase, then expanding to reveal a fleeting, almost subliminal impression, towering shelves laden with books, a faint scent of old parchment, and a chill that wasn't quite cold, but rather the absence of warmth. "It's moving again," Alaric murmured, his voice laced with a newfound certainty. He held out the amulet for Alara and Finn to see. Alara leaned in, her eyes sharp. "Fascinating. Not a direct location this time, but a type of place? Look at those glyphs, Alaric. Do you recognize them?" Alaric traced a symbol with his finger. "Not exactly. They're archaic, but the underlying structure, it feels like a classification system. Like a library catalog or an archive's indexing runes." He frowned, trying to place the vague, spectral aroma. And the scent, old paper, dust, and something else, almost like dried ink. Finn, ever practical, squinted at the swirling light. "So, we're looking for a big pile of books then? Should be easy enough in the wizarding world. Every other stately home has a library bigger than my first flat." "No, Finn," Alara said, already conjuring a quill and parchment, jotting down the shifting symbols. "The specificity of the runes, the implied order, this suggests a significant magical repository. Not just a private collection. Something forgotten, perhaps. Or deliberately obscured." Alaric's mind raced, drawing on his years of hidden lore. There are whispers of the Great Library of Alexandria having a magical counterpart, lost to time. Or the Chamber of Whispering Scrolls, a legendary archive said to house the original texts of the most powerful enchantments, rumored to be hidden somewhere beneath the cairngorms. He felt a thrill of anticipation, his self-doubt momentarily eclipsed by the lure of ancient knowledge. The chill, it's not a cold chill. It's the chill of disuse. Of a place untouched by light or warmth for centuries. Alara's eyes widened. The Chamber of Whispering Scrolls. Legend says it was protected by enchantments that tested the worthiness and knowledge of those who sought entry. Cunning guardians, indeed. "That's it," Alaric said, a jolt of recognition hitting him. "The patterns on the amulet. They're not just guiding us to a place, but hinting at how we might navigate it. A puzzle." He looked at his friends, a genuine smile breaking through his usual diffidence. "Finn, can you track a place like that? A legendary, hidden archive?" Finn scratched his head. "Legends are tricky things, Alaric. But with Alara's research and my tracking charms, we can certainly give it a shot. The cairngorms are vast, but magical signatures of such magnitude tend to leave a trace, however faint." Days blurred into a focused whirlwind of research and preparation. Alara delved into ancient texts, cross-referencing every whisper and rumor about hidden archives. Finn consulted old magical maps and devised enhanced tracking charms. Alaric, meanwhile, spent hours meditating with the Lumen Amulet, trying to deepen his connection, to understand the subtle shifts and nuances of Mothra's light. He felt the amulet resonate with his own growing confidence, as if his belief in himself amplified its guidance. Finally, Alara pinpointed a likely location. A remote, magically shielded valley deep within the cairngorms, known only through a cryptic poem referencing knowledge sleeping 'neath the granite giants. Finn's enhanced tracking charms, surprisingly, picked up faint, ancient magical echoes from the area, a signature unlike anything he'd encountered before. Their journey to the Scottish Highlands was a blur of apparition and cautious trekking. The air grew crisp, thin, and the granite peaks loomed like silent sentinels. As they approached the valley, an almost imperceptible shimmer in the air indicated a powerful concealment ward. "This is it," Alara whispered, consulting a worn map fragment. The poem speaks of the Gate of Unlearning, where truth is cloaked in falsehood. Alaric felt the Lumen Amulet pulse urgently, its light now radiating outward, not in a beam, but as a diffuse glow that subtly illuminated the very fabric of the air around them. He saw faint, almost invisible lines of magical energy woven into the valley walls, shifting and intertwining like a complex tapestry. "Hold on," Alaric said, raising a hand. "The light, it's showing me something. The ward isn't just about protection, it's about misdirection. Every path looks plausible, but only one is correct." Finn drew his wand, his stance defensive. "Sounds like a nasty piece of work. What's the trick?" "Look," Alaric pointed to the energy lines. "They're not stable. They flicker, just at the edges of perception. If you follow the strongest current, you'll be led to a dead end. The poem, truth is cloaked in falsehood, we need to follow the weakest current. The path that seems least promising." Alara adjusted her spectacles, her eyes scanning the ethereal lines Alaric indicated. "That's brilliant, Alaric. A classic misdirection enchantment. Most would naturally gravitate towards the strongest magical signature." Alaric nodded, a sense of calm overriding his usual apprehension. He took the lead, wand out, but not for casting. He was using it as a divining rod, feeling for the subtle ebb and flow of magical energy, guiding them through the invisible maze. They moved slowly, cautiously, through what felt like an ordinary rock face, but Alaric knew they were navigating a complex web of illusion. At one point, a perfectly rendered illusion of a roaring beast lunged from a shadowy crevice, but Alaric didn't flinch, pushing past it, knowing it was merely a distraction. Finally, after what felt like an hour of navigating the spectral labyrinth, the shimmering energy parted, revealing a massive, intricately carved stone door embedded seamlessly into the mountain face. It bore no visible lock or handle, only a constellation of ancient runes swirling across its surface. "Well, that's certainly not opening with Alohomora," Finn muttered, eyeing the door with a mixture of awe and caution. "These are the entry runes," Alara said, tracing them with her finger. "But they're constantly shifting, reforming. They're not a static password. It's a test of knowledge. The Gate of Unlearning." As Alara spoke, the runes pulsed with a soft, ethereal light, transforming into a series of short, enigmatic phrases in high ancient runes. Each phrase is a riddle, Alara translated quickly. About magical history, lost spells, obscure lore. We have to provide the correct answer inscribed onto the door itself before the runes shift again. She gulped. "And if we fail, the door doesn't just stay shut. Legend says it repels the unworthy with powerful memory charms, wiping all knowledge of the chamber from their minds." Alaric felt the familiar knot of anxiety twist in his stomach, but then a deeper, more profound sensation took hold, the steady warmth of the Lumen Amulet. He looked at the first riddle. "I am the song sung before creation, the breath that shapes the ether." "What am I?" Alara instantly began sifting through her mental archives. That sounds like the primordial chant of the first wizards, but the specific phrasing, it could also refer to the source incantation, or even the very concept of intent in magic. Alaric closed his eyes, not to recall facts, but to feel the answer. He thought of the boundless, formless energy he'd felt when destroying the first Horcrux, the pure, unadulterated power that permeated existence. The amulet pulsed in rhythm with his thoughts. He opened his eyes, a strange confidence radiating from him. "It's the whisper of Etheria," he stated, his voice clear and resonant. Not a specific chant, but the inherent magical resonance of creation itself, before it was bound by form. It's in the apocryphal text, Secrets of the Void Weavers, page 417. Alara gasped. The Void Weavers? That text is almost impossible to find, practically eradicated. And you remembered the page number? Alaric shrugged, a small smile playing on his lips. I spent a lot of time in the restricted section. He raised his wand and, with a precision that surprised even himself, tapped a specific rune on the door. It glowed in acknowledgement, then integrated itself into the central pattern, stabilizing for a moment. A new riddle appeared. This one concerned the lost ingredient for the elixir of perpetual youth. Alara immediately recited a long list of possibilities. Alaric, however, focused on the phrasing, the subtle hints in the word choice. He remembered a fragment of a poem from an ancient grimoire he'd read, a forgotten verse that tied the elixir to a very specific, almost mystical, dewdrop from a moon-petal flower that bloomed only during a celestial alignment. Riddle after riddle appeared, each more obscure than the last, taxing Alara's encyclopedic knowledge and Finn's keen observational skills. He occasionally spotted a cleverly hidden hint in the rune patterns. But it was Alaric, guided by a nascent instinct and an uncanny recall of the most esoteric lore, who provided the crucial answers. He didn't just remember facts, he understood the underlying magical principles, connecting them in ways he never had before. His self-doubt began to recede, replaced by a growing conviction in his own unique abilities. Finally, the last rune flashed, asking, I am the light that pierces deepest shadow, the silent guardian of forgotten truth. What am I? Alaric didn't hesitate. He gently touched the Lumen Amulet, then looked at the door. Mothra's light, he stated simply, and the words glowed on the stone. With a deep, resonant rumble that vibrated through their very bones, the colossal stone door slowly, majestically, began to slide inwards, revealing a cavernous, dust-laden chamber bathed in a soft, ethereal glow from unseen magical lights. Towering shelves filled with scrolls, books, and ancient artifacts stretched into the gloom, a silent testament to centuries of accumulated knowledge. Incredible, Alara breathed, stepping inside. The Lumen Amulet, now vibrating with intense urgency, pulsed outwards. Its light, no longer diffuse, focused into a shimmering beam, cutting through the dusty air and piercing the darkness at the very heart of the chamber. The beam settled on a small, unassuming plinth where a single, elegantly crafted silver quill rested. It was beautiful, antique, but utterly devoid of any overt dark magic. That's it, Alaric said, his voice quiet but firm. The second Horcrux. The quill, bathed in Mothra's light, began to emit a faint, sickly green aura, a corruption that had been perfectly concealed until now. A low, guttural growl seemed to emanate from the quill itself, a sound of ancient, malevolent defiance. Alaric stepped forward, his wand steady. He felt a surge of cold dread, the phantom presence of Voldemort's fractured soul pressing against his mind, a whisper of immense power and eternal life. But the warmth of the Lumen Amulet radiated outwards, forming a protective cocoon around him, its light a pure, benevolent shield. Ready, Alaric? Finn asked, his hand on Alaric's shoulder, grounding him. Alara stood ready with a shielding charm, her expression resolute. Ready, Alaric affirmed. He focused all his intent, all his burgeoning confidence, into his spell. Mothra's light intensified, wrapping around the silver quill. The object shrieked, a sound that grated on their very souls, as Alaric unleashed his magic. Ignis Purgatorio. A torrent of pure, incandescent white fire erupted from Alaric's wand, a cleansing flame born of Mothra's light. It enveloped the silver quill, and the object convulsed, struggling against the purity of the magic. The green aura flared violently, then withered, dissolving into wisps of shadow. The quill twisted, contorted, and then, with a final, piercing shriek of pure agony and despair, shattered into 1,000 glittering fragments of silver dust that dissolved harmlessly into the air. The chamber of whispering scrolls fell silent. The air felt lighter, cleaner. 2 Horcruxes down. Alaric let out a shaky breath, feeling the surge of triumphant exhaustion. He looked at his friends, a genuine, unburdened smile gracing his features. "We did it." Alara rushed forward, her eyes bright with victory. "Alaric, that was magnificent. Your knowledge, your intuition, you led us through it all." Finn clapped him on the back. "Bloody brilliant, mate. You're not just following the light anymore, you're wielding it." Alaric felt a profound shift within himself. The boy who'd once trembled at the thought of facing a boggart now stood tall, having outsmarted ancient magical guardians and destroyed a piece of the darkest wizard's soul. He was beginning to understand that his connection to ancient lore wasn't just a quirky hobby, but a powerful weapon. As the echoes of their triumph faded, the Lumen Amulet began to pulse again, subtly at first, then with increasing intensity. Alaric looked down. The light within was shifting, forming new, even more complex patterns. This time, there was no familiar imagery of a library or a shop. Instead, the light swirled into a chaotic, almost violent vortex, and for a split second, Alaric saw a flash of something dark, vast, and utterly devoid of life. A place of profound despair and potent, destructive magic. The ancient runes that now formed on the amulet were jagged, aggressive, unlike any he had seen before. A shiver, colder than the Cairngorm winds, ran down Alaric's spine. This next Horcrux wouldn't be hidden by cunning riddles or misdirection. This next one would be protected by brute force, by overwhelming magical power. The Oracle of Lumen, through the amulet, was guiding them towards a place of immense danger, a true bastion of Voldemort's lingering power. The air around them still hummed with the afterglow of success. The destruction of the second Horcrux, a cursed goblet hidden in the crumbling remains of a long-forgotten alchemist's lab, had instilled a profound sense of purpose within Alaric. The act of feeling the dark magic shrivel under Mothra's light, seeing the evil artifact turn to ash, had cemented his resolve. His self-doubt hadn't vanished entirely, a persistent whisper at the edge of his consciousness, but now it was consistently drowned out by a burgeoning confidence. He was no longer just assisting, he was leading. Alara and Finn shared his renewed vigor. Alara, her keen mind already analyzing the success, was compiling notes on the Horcruxes' varying defenses. Finn, ever the practical one, was meticulously cleaning and recharging their wands, a rare smile gracing his usually stoic features. "Two down," Finn declared, snapping his wand back into its holster. "Feels good, doesn't it, Alaric?" Alaric nodded, clutching the Lumen Amulet, which felt warm against his chest. "It does. Like chipping away at a colossal, unseen mountain." "A mountain that's trying to chip back," Alara added, pushing her spectacles up her nose. "Voldemort's lingering will is tenacious. We can't afford complacency." As if on cue, the Lumen Amulet pulsed. A soft, ethereal glow emanated from beneath Alaric's robes, drawing their eyes. The familiar shimmering motes of light began to coalesce, forming a vivid, unsettling vision in the air before them. This time, the image wasn't of a familiar location, but a place shrouded in ancient decay and oppressive shadow. They saw gnarled, skeletal trees clawing at a perpetually gray sky. Below them, a sprawling, Gothic manor, its stone blackened with age, its windows like vacant, despairing eyes, stood silhouetted against a bruised horizon. Gargoyles with twisted grins adorned its battlements, their stone forms seeming to writhe with dormant malice. A palpable aura of dread radiated from the spectral image, a chill that seeped into their very bones. "Blackwood Manor," Alara whispered, her eyes wide with recognition. "I've only seen sketches in ancient texts. It's legendary for its dark history, home to a family of notoriously cruel purebloods, infamous for their practice of blood magic. It's been abandoned for centuries, said to be cursed beyond repair." Alaric felt a prickle of unease, but also a surge of determination. This Horcrux felt different, heavier, older. That explains the feeling of density. The magic there must be incredibly potent. "And not the friendly kind," Finn muttered, hand already resting on his wand. If the legends are true, the wards on that place would make Gringotts look like a garden gate. The journey to the outskirts of Blackwood Manor was undertaken with a grim seriousness. The landscape grew increasingly desolate as they approached, the air becoming thick and heavy, laden with a silence that felt unnatural. When they finally reached a vantage point overlooking the estate, the true scale of the challenge became apparent. The manor was even more imposing in person, a skeletal titan against the twilight sky. Whispers of dark enchantments seemed to emanate from its very stones, a chorus of ancient, malevolent magic. Visible shimmered several layers of wards, not the bright, active shields they'd encountered before, but dark, almost oily layers that absorbed light and magic alike. They pulsed with a malevolent energy, like the skin of some colossal, slumbering beast. Shadows danced unnaturally beneath the gnarled trees, hinting at less tangible guardians. "Those aren't just standard protection charms," Alara said, her voice hushed. "They're interwoven with ancient curses, possibly even sentient entities." Blackwood Manor was known for its living wards, fueled by the essence of its victims. "Jolly," Finn grumbled, peering through his omnioculars. "And look there, by the main gate. Inferi. At least 5 of them, shambling around like they're just waiting for a delivery." Alaric, however, wasn't focused on the obvious threats. He activated the Lumen Amulet again, letting Mothra's light flood his senses. The shimmering motes danced over the manor, not highlighting the wards themselves, but tracing faint, almost invisible lines beneath and around them. These were not the obvious magical arteries of the manor, but subtle energy conduits, forgotten ley lines that ran through the very earth, connecting to neglected parts of the estate. "The main entrance is a trap," Alaric stated, his gaze fixed on a crumbling section of wall leading to what appeared to be an old crypt, barely visible through the overgrowth. "Mothra's light shows a different path. Not through, but around the primary wards, through a forgotten access point linked to an ancient network of ley lines." Alara adjusted her spectacles, intrigued. "A bypass, not a breach. Brilliant. It implies a weakness in the original design, or perhaps a blind spot created by centuries of neglect and rewarding. But what kind of access point?" Alaric pointed towards the crypt entrance. "There. A crumbling section near the old servant's crypt. The light shows a series of ancient runes inscribed there, almost eroded away. They're dormant, but if activated correctly, they could briefly disrupt the specific frequency of the surrounding ley lines, creating a temporary phase shift for just one person at a time, allowing passage." "A temporal, localized ward disruption?" Alara's eyes gleamed. "That's incredibly specific and dangerous. The timing would have to be impeccable, and the activation would require a precise understanding of ancient runic magic. Blackwood family runes are notoriously complex." "That's where you come in, Alara," Alaric said, a flicker of a smile touching his lips. "You're the expert on ancient scripts. And Finn," he turned to their loyal protector, "will need a distraction. Something big, loud, and convincing enough to draw attention away from us accessing the crypt." Finn grinned, a spark of mischief in his eyes. "Finally, some fun. Inferi are boring. Can I light something on fire?" "Preferably not the entire manor, Finn," Alaric replied, "but something that sounds like an invasion on the main grounds. We need to buy ourselves enough time for Alara to decipher and activate the runes, and for us to slip through." The plan was risky, demanding perfect coordination and absolute trust. They spent the next hour meticulously planning, Alara poring over her scrolls, trying to find parallels to Blackwood family runes, while Finn sketched out diversionary tactics. "Right," Alaric said, gathering their attention as the first stars began to pierce the bruised sky. "Here's how we proceed. Finn, you'll create your diversion on the main approach to the manor in precisely 20 minutes. Focus on drawing out anything that might be patrolling the exterior. Alara and I will move towards the crypt. Once we're through, we'll try to get to the ancestral vault. It's likely to be the deepest, most protected part of the manor." Alara nodded, her face grim. "I've found some preliminary interpretations of the Blackwood ancestral protection runes. They often involve a resonance frequency. If I can match it, the phase shift should be manageable. And if it isn't?" Finn asked, his usual lightheartedness replaced by a serious intensity. Alaric met his gaze. "Then we improvise. But we're doing this. This Horcrux, it feels like a linchpin. Removing it will destabilize a significant portion of Voldemort's remaining power. We have to succeed." As the agreed-upon time approached, a palpable tension settled over them. Alaric felt his heart drumming, a mix of apprehension and exhilaration. He was no longer the hesitant wizard, but a leader prepared to take calculated risks. "Good luck, both of you," Finn said, giving them a firm nod. "Don't get yourselves killed before I get a chance to save you." With a final, determined glance, he melted into the deepening shadows, circling towards the manor's main gates. Alaric and Alara moved stealthily towards the crypt, their footsteps barely disturbing the fallen leaves. The air grew colder, and the ancient, moss-covered stones of the manor seemed to loom larger, exhaling a sigh of forgotten misery. They reached the crumbling crypt entrance. The air here was even heavier, imbued with the scent of damp earth and decay. Alaric held the Lumen Amulet aloft, and its soft glow revealed the faint, intricate patterns of the runes Alara needed to decipher. They twisted like thorny vines, barely visible beneath centuries of grime. "They are indeed Blackwood family runes," Alara whispered, tracing them with a gloved finger. "They represent familial lineage and a binding oath to protect their domain. It's a complex resonance spell, requiring precise magical inflection." Just then, a distant explosion rent the air, followed by the clatter of stone and a chilling, guttural shriek, Finn's diversion. Dark figures, visible even through the wards, began to converge on the manor's main gate. "Now, Alara," Alaric urged, standing ready, wand gripped tight. Alara closed her eyes, murmuring ancient words, her wand tip glowing with a soft, purplish light as she traced the intricate runes. The air around them began to vibrate, a low hum that grew steadily stronger. The faint shimmer of the wards flickered, showing a momentary weakness near the crypt entrance. "Alaric, now!" Alara cried, pushing against the almost invisible barrier. Alaric lunged forward, pushing through the shimmering distortion. For a disorienting moment, he felt like he was being squeezed through a narrow, cold aperture before he tumbled onto the other side, inside the manor grounds. He turned, extending his hand, and Alara followed, collapsing beside him. They were inside the perimeter, but the relief was short-lived. The sound of Finn's battle continued, but now, from deeper within the manor, a new, more profound thrumming began. It was a rhythmic, pulsing magic, far more potent than the exterior wards, like a slow, deliberate heartbeat. This wasn't the sound of reanimated gargoyles or simple curses. A spectral, shadowy figure materialized from the deepest recess of the manor's forgotten conservatory, its form coalescing from the pervasive gloom. Its eyes, twin points of malevolent crimson, fixed on them with an unnerving intensity. It was tall, gaunt, and carried a staff that crackled with dark energy. "Intruders," a voice rasped, devoid of human warmth, echoing through the decaying halls. "You trespass where life itself is forbidden. The Master's treasure is not for your defilement." Alaric's blood ran cold. This wasn't a mere animated guardian. This was a living, breathing, dark wizard, deeply devoted to Voldemort, one whose very presence radiated a powerful, ancient form of dark magic. They had bypassed the initial defenses, but had walked straight into the lair of the true protector. The true battle for the third Horcrux had just begun. The air in the secret London safe house hummed with an almost unbearable tension. One by one, Voldemort's anchors to this world had been systematically severed, each destruction a jarring release of dark magic and a surge of empowering light. But the weight of the last Horcrux, the final shadow shard, pressed down on Alaric like a physical burden. He had grown, shed much of his self-doubt, faced down terrifying remnants of Voldemort's will, and led his friends with a courage he hadn't known he possessed. Yet, the final step felt the most daunting. Alara sat hunched over ancient parchments spread across a makeshift table, her brow furrowed in concentration, while Finian methodically cleaned and enchanted his dual-worn wand, the rhythmic thrum-thrum a comforting counterpoint to the nervous silence. Alaric, however, was still. The Lumen Amulet pulsed faintly against his chest, a soft, warm beacon in the oppressive gloom of their mission's finality. Then, without warning, the amulet flared with an intensity that made the shadows dance. Mothra's light, usually a shimmering, gentle glow, erupted in a violent kaleidoscope of colors, coalescing into a swirling vortex before Alaric's eyes. He gasped, falling back slightly as a direct vision assaulted his senses. He saw ancient stone, worn smooth by eons of wind and rain. Strange, geometric carvings adorned crumbling pillars. A vast chasm, filled with a swirling emerald mist, seemed to pull at the very fabric of reality. At the chasm's edge, a towering, crystalline structure, once vibrant with pure magic, now stood corrupted, its facets stained a sickening, inky black. A faint, almost imperceptible whisper echoed in his mind. The heart, defiled, where light first touched stone, beneath the veil of whispers. The vision snapped shut, leaving Alaric breathless, his heart hammering against his ribs. He blinked, the mundane reality of the safe house slowly returning. Alaric? What happened? Ilara was already at his side, her voice tight with concern. Finian had dropped his wand, his hand instinctively on the hilt of his short sword. Alaric pointed a trembling finger towards the spot where the vision had manifested. A clue. The oracle, it showed me. A temple. Ancient. Corrupted crystal. A chasm. It called it the heart, where light first touched stone, and beneath the veil of whispers. Ilara's eyes widened, a flicker of recognition sparking in their depths. She scrambled back to her parchments, her fingers flying across the aged texts. The veil of whispers. The heart of Ethel. Oh, gods, Alaric, it can't be. What is it, Ilara? Finian demanded, his voice low and urgent. There's an ancient legend, she began, her voice gaining speed, of a temple hidden deep within the Celtic wilds, said to be the very point where the world's protective magic, Mothra's light, first manifested. A place of immense power, now lost to time and legend. It's called the Temple of the Lumen Heart. Ancient texts describe it as having a central chasm, the heart from which raw magical energy flows, and a colossal crystal, the Lumen Shard, that amplified and directed that power. She looked up, her face pale. If Voldemort managed to corrupt that, it would be an unimaginable desecration. The final Horcrux would not only be protected, it would be actively poisoning the source of all benevolent magic in Britain. Alaric felt a cold knot tighten in his stomach. The Veil of Whispers, what's that? A geographical anomaly, Ilara explained, tapping a map. A perpetual magical fog bank that obscures a remote valley, rumored to conceal the temple. It's also a powerful ward, designed to keep the profane out, or perhaps, now, to keep whatever is inside, in. Finian whistled softly. So, the biggest threat in the nastiest place. Sounds about right for Voldemort's grand finale. He hefted his wand. Ready when you are, Alaric. Alaric looked from Ilara's determined, if anxious, face to Finian's steadfast, unwavering gaze. A quiet strength settled within him. He was no longer the timid wizard unsure of his own shadow. He was the guardian of Mothra's light. Then we go, he declared, his voice firm. To the Temple of the Lumen Heart. Their journey to the remote Celtic wilds was a test of endurance and resolve. The Veil of Whispers was more than just fog. It was a swirling, disorienting mist laced with ancient illusions and magical deterrents, designed to repel any who sought the temple. Ilara, with her knowledge of ancient wards, navigated them through faint, almost invisible pathways, her hand frequently reaching for Alaric's to draw strength from the amulet's steady thrum. Finian, ever vigilant, kept watch, his Patronus, a magnificent Irish wolfhound, bounding ahead, its silver light briefly piercing the oppressive gray. The deeper they ventured, the stronger the subtle hum of corrupted magic became, a sickening counterpoint to the amulet's pure glow. It was a tangible presence, a pressure that sought to drain their energy and infest their minds with doubt. Alaric, however, focused on the Lumen Amulet, allowing its benevolent warmth to shield him. He could feel the proximity of the final Horcrux, a powerful darkness drawing him in, yet the light was a stronger pull. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they broke through the veil. Before them lay a hidden valley, stark and desolate. In its center, atop a jagged, towering rock formation, stood the temple of the Lumen Heart. It was exactly as Alaric had seen it, ancient, majestic, yet undeniably defiled. The colossal crystal he'd witnessed in his vision, the Lumen Shard, was indeed corrupted, its once pristine facets now a swirling abyss of blackness, throbbing with a malevolent light that seemed to suck the very color from the surrounding landscape. From the chasm below, a faint, sickly green mist rose, curling around the temple's base. "It's even worse than I imagined," Alara whispered, her voice barely audible. "The energy, it's being siphoned, twisted." Finian drew his wand, his face grim. "Voldemort clearly put all his eggs in this basket. I can practically taste the dark magic in the air." As they approached, the air grew heavy, thick with oppressive magic. Whispers, faint and insidious, slithered into their minds, echoing Alaric's deepest fears and past insecurities. "You're an ordinary wizard, Alaric, always overlooked. What makes you think you can stop him?" Alaric gritted his teeth, clenching his fist around the amulet. "Not anymore," he growled, banishing the thoughts with a force he hadn't possessed months ago. "He won't get in our heads." The temple entrance was not guarded by Death Eaters, but by something far more ancient and terrifying. Corrupted elemental spirits, twisted manifestations of earth and air, coalesced from the mist and stone, their forms grotesque and their eyes burning with dark fire. They shrieked, a sound that tore at the very fabric of their minds, and lunged. "Finian, defensive perimeter," Alaric shouted, thrusting his wand forward. "Alara, research any weaknesses." Finian, a whirlwind of motion, erected shimmering shields, deflecting the elemental onslaught. "These things are tough, Alaric. Pure dark magic." Alara scanned the temple's ancient inscriptions, her wand illuminating faint runes. "They're bound by ancient blood magic, corrupted by Voldemort's touch. We need to break the binding rune on the main portal to weaken them." Alaric focused. He could see the intricate network of dark magic, like twisted vines, feeding the elementals. But beneath it, a faint, pure light pulsed, the remnants of the original protective enchantment. "Hold them, Finian," he yelled, then closed his eyes, channeling Mothra's light. He felt the pure energy surge through him, focusing it into a single, blinding beam. "Lumen Liberate." The beam struck the main portal, not with destructive force, but with purifying intent. The twisted runes flared, then shattered, releasing a wave of raw, benevolent magic. The corrupted elementals shrieked louder, their forms flickering and weakening as their power source was disrupted. Finian seized the opportunity, blasting them apart with focus spells. With the immediate threat cleared, they pressed deeper into the temple. The corruption was pervasive here. The chasm Alaric had seen in his vision yawned before them, a gaping maw exhaling the sickly green mist. Above it, the enormous, corrupted Lumen Shard pulsed with an almost tangible malevolence. This was it. The final Horcrux. As they reached the central altar beneath the shard, a figure emerged from the swirling shadows, not a loyalist, but a spectral manifestation of Voldemort's concentrated will, an ethereal, wraith-like form, shimmering with dark power. Its voice, a cold whisper that echoed in their minds, resonated with malicious glee. "You've come far, Alaric Thorne, a pitiful, ordinary wizard, but you will go no further. This is my heart, my greatest triumph, anchoring me to eternity. Destroy it, and you merely free me to truly walk this world again, unburdened by these petty constraints." The wraith coalesced into a solid form, a distorted, terrifying mockery of Voldemort's true self, and blasted a torrent of dark magic towards them. "He's lying," Alaric roared, even as he deflected the spell with a desperate protego. "He wants to scare us into stopping. This is the only way to sever his ties." He felt a surge of cold dread at Voldemort's claim, but the Lumen Amulet throbbed against his chest, urging him forward, purifying his resolve. The Oracle's whispers were clearer now. "Destroy the anchor, Alaric. Sever the tether. What is freed can be confronted." Alara, quick as thought, unleashed a barrage of ancient counter-curses, weakening the wraith's projections. Finian, with a primal roar, charged forward, his spells slamming into the ethereal form, buying Alaric precious seconds. The shard, Alaric. Alara yelled, pointing to the massive, black crystal. It's infused with his very essence. You have to channel the light directly into it. Alaric knew what he had to do. He closed his eyes for a moment, pushing away the lingering doubt, the insidious whispers, the terrifying prospect of what Voldemort's words might mean. He focused on the amulet, on the warmth spreading through his veins, on the ancient, benevolent power of Mothra's light. He was its conduit, its champion. He had transformed from a hesitant wizard into a leader, a protector. This was his destiny. He opened his eyes, his gaze resolute. The wraith solidified further, its features contorting into a snarl of pure hatred as it sensed his intent. It lunged, its skeletal fingers reaching for him. But Finian intercepted it with a crashing shield charm, and Alara bound it momentarily with a series of intricate magical chains. Alaric raised his wand, pointing it directly at the corrupted Lumen shard. He felt the entire power of the Lumen Amulet flood into him, a scorching, purifying fire. He channeled it, pouring every ounce of his will, his hope, and his newfound courage into the spell. Lumen Maximum. A blinding pillar of pure, white light erupted from his wand, slamming into the black crystal. The Horcrux shrieked, a sound of agony and pure fury, as the light began to burn away its corruption. Cracks spiderwebbed across the vast shard, glowing with molten gold where the light touched the darkness. The sickly green mist in the chasm began to recede, replaced by clear, vibrant energy. The wraith Voldemort roared, struggling against Alara's weakening binds, its form flickering. No, you fool. You have only hastened my return. The true confrontation is yet to come. But Alaric didn't falter. He pushed harder, the power threatening to overwhelm him, but he held on, his vision fixed on the crystal. With a final, ear-splitting scream, the Lumen shard exploded, not with destructive force, but with an implosion of light. The blackness was utterly consumed, leaving behind a magnificent, pristine crystal, pulsating with the raw, pure energy of Mothra's light. A powerful wave of benevolent magic washed over them, purifying the temple, cleansing the air, and filling the chasm with shimmering, emerald energy. The oppressive dread vanished, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Alaric fell to his knees, utterly drained, but a triumphant smile touched his lips. It was done. All the Horcruxes were destroyed. Alara and Finian rushed to his side, their faces etched with relief and awe. You did it, Alaric, Alara whispered, tears shining in her eyes. You actually did it. Finian clapped him on the shoulder, a wide grin splitting his face. We did it. All of them gone. As the last remnants of dark magic dissipated from the temple, the Lumen Amulet pulsed once more, but this time, its light was different. It didn't reveal a hidden signature, but instead, it focused. A single, shimmering beam of Mothra's light shot forth from the amulet, not into the distance, but straight down into the purified chasm. Then, from the depths of the chasm, the oracle of Lumen's voice echoed, no longer a whisper, but a clear, resonant pronouncement that filled the entire temple. The shadow shards are purged. The threads are severed. Voldemort's essence, no longer anchored, begins to coalesce. He spoke truth, Alaric. By destroying the anchors, you have forced his fragmented spirit to seek a single vessel, to gather his power anew. The path is clear for his true form to awaken. He is drawn to the place of his ultimate ambition, the seat of pureblood power, waiting to rebirth himself. This was but the beginning, Alaric. The shadow is now whole, and the true reckoning awaits. Alaric looked at the beam of light, then back at Alara and Finian, a new kind of dread settling in his gut, but mixed with a grim determination. The Horcruxes were gone. But Voldemort was coming back. And this time, he would be whole.